positive way. Today, I welcome Orange County Transportation Authority Board Chairman Steve Jones and OCTA Chief Executive Officer Daryl Johnson. Thank you, Steve and Daryl, for being on Impact OC.
Hi, Don. This is Steve Jones. I'm chair of the board of Orange County Transportation Authority, also the mayor of Garden Grove, and it's an honor to be on here with you guys on Impact OC today.
And Daryl, we're happy to have you.
Thank you, Don. Very excited to be here. There's a lot of things going on in transportation, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to talk about them.
Well, Steve, how can the OCTA fulfill its responsibility for keeping residents and commuters moving throughout the 34 cities and unincorporated areas of Orange County?
Well, I can tell you, Don, it's really been a challenge this year because of COVID. So a global health pandemic sweeps across the world, and we just had to go through the learning curve that everybody else did, but with a huge responsibility of maintaining mobility through the county, through our bus systems, through the freeways, keeping construction projects moving forward, keeping our employees safe, keeping our customers, our bus riders safe. It's been a challenging year, and I believe we've performed just superbly.
So what are some of the things you're doing?
Well, I mean, it starts with addressing just the changes that come upon us. So, I mean, we've seen our bus ridership drop off dramatically. From 120,000 riders per day down to 25,000 at the bottom during the midst of the initial lockdown, stay-at-home order. So we had to adjust. We had to adjust routes. We had to adjust staffing. We had to adjust all those things. Plus, just all of the office-related things with a large organization, working remotely, finding new ways to just keep things moving without interruption to the public who relies upon us to be essential and do what we do.
Well, Daryl, please explain some of the projects and programs and services that the OCTA has to improve mobility for more than 3 million Orange County residents.
Well, thanks, Don. As Chairman Jones said, we've got our plate full. Transportation is always a busy thing, and in addition to all the things he described about keeping an organization moving and working and dealing with employee safety and bus ridership, we also came into 2020 with our largest ever capital construction program ever. So significant and major improvements on Interstate 405 all the way from Costa Mesa to Long Beach. We're working on the Orange County streetcar in the cities of Santa Ana and Garden Grove. We've got a 6-mile improvement project between the 73 and El Toro and I-5 in South Orange County. We were working on the I-5 in Santa Ana and Orange, right near the OCTA offices at the Orange Crush. So we had a wealth of things that were going on. We were working on new hydrogen fuel cell buses. So the challenge, of course, was to do all of that during the pandemic, but there was a few silver linings, as I think all your listeners know, and traffic was virtually non-existent in the spring and early summer. So we were able to really do some unique things to get things done faster, quicker, different times of the day. So a lot of projects going on, lots of improvements, but it's our biggest program ever. And we're right in the middle of that global pandemic trying to deliver our biggest program of projects ever, about $3 billion of construction work.
And Steve, I understand that a lot of the funding comes from Measure M. Please explain that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Measure M is pretty unique, and we're honored to have the trust of the voters and the residents in Orange County who place that responsibility on us to deliver the promises made by Measure M. It's something that our board and our staff takes very, very seriously. So projects like the OC streetcar to develop the first streetcar system in Orange County, starting out with a route that goes about 4.1 miles from Santa Ana to Garden Grove. We're on track. We're actually just starting to lay track today. I got a picture earlier of the first tracks being laid. It's exciting to see, even in these challenging times, that we're still delivering on Measure M promises, which push Orange County forward within the state to get priority for funding from Caltrans, other agencies, on freeway projects, other things. So it's a unique self-imposed tax mechanism in Orange County that allows us to just improve mobility for all of our residents in a variety of different forms.
Well, explain Measure M more specifically, how we pay for it. the taxes?
Well, I think, as Chairman Jones indicated, it's a self-imposed tax. And, around the state, there's 58 counties in California. 25 of them have went to their voters and said, we would like to tax ourselves so we can pay for transportation improvements that the normal gas tax doesn't pay for. A lot of people think about, that gas tax that when they fill up their car, the state gas tax and the federal gas tax, and that covers a piece of it. But here in Orange County, the voters in 1991 and then again in 2011, and in 2011, with nearly 70% of the voters voting yes, they said, we would like to tax ourselves an extra half cent on sales tax and to pay for transportation improvements. And what OCTA did, the board leadership at the time and the staff at the time said, well, if you do that and you trust us with this, that is indicated by Chairman Jones, we will keep our promises and we'll make investments into the system. So every time you go and buy a taxable good in Orange County, a 0.5% or a half cent of that is going into transportation in Orange County. And that's paying to keep your roads paved. It's filling those potholes. It's synchronizing those signals. It's widening the freeways where appropriate. It's building OC streetcar. It's helping Metrolink commuter rail. And it's building new roads. We contributed through Measure M to the La Plata extension that connected San Juan Capistrano, the county of Orange, and San Clemente a few years ago. So there's so many things, Don, that are going on. And I think the important mechanism is those voters, nobody likes taxes. Nobody raises their hand and says, I love taxes. But what they do raise their hand and say is, if we can have a good investment and we can have confidence in the government agency that's going to build our transportation system, we're willing to put our trust in their hands. And we've been entrusted with the confidence of the voters now twice, and we take that very, very seriously. So I hope that answers a few questions on the mechanism of how it works here in Orange County. It's pretty simple, but it's really effective.
And I understand that on the board, you have representatives from all the cities. Steve?
Yes, that's correct. So it's actually a 17-member board, which includes all 5 district county supervisors in Orange County, and then 10 representatives from the various cities throughout Orange County. There are also 2 public members, just to add in sort of a little local flavor from non-electeds onto the board. And we also have a Caltrans representative who's a non-voting member who participates in the meeting as well, since we have so much interaction on the freeway projects with Caltrans. So it's a very large and dynamic board. The meetings are very vibrant, very detailed. They can often go on for hours as we drill into a lot of minutia on each item. And I would say the board members are very, very academic in their approach to these agendas and drilling into the details and asking the right questions. And my gosh, the staff at OCTA is always prepared with answers. It's a very well-oiled machine. So it's been an honor for me to get a glimpse of just how such a well-run organization works by serving on this board. And I'm just very proud to be affiliated with OCTA.
So what that means is that if any resident in Orange County has an issue regarding transportation, they can go to their local elected official that could get that message to your board.
That's correct, Dawn. We receive a lot of feedback very regularly, and that is processed and funneled to us in various formats. So, I mean, through local city officials receiving commentary that they feed through to their OCTA representatives. We have a lot of just local interaction with the cities that we serve, people attending meetings. I know that's been disrupted lately because we're not doing live meetings, but teleconference. But still, there's a lot of participation, public comments. There's also items get taken down to the committee level to get studied more specifically with recommendations to go up to the board. A lot of community engagement out in the communities where projects are impacting or could impact the local community. I think we just try to be very, very conscientious about, being community oriented and responding to the public, and not just operating in a vacuum as large agencies can do sometimes. So I think we've just perfected a system that's very engaging, and we're active listeners to the local levels, and we tend to respond to groundswells of support from the local levels up as opposed to pushing agendas from the top down.
Don, and if I could to add on to that, I think this idea of engagement is so important. So you talked about the elected officials and the city council members and county supervisors. The board has also established a couple of citizen committees. So there's a citizens advisory committee. Each board member appoints 2 people to that citizens advisory committee. We seek regular feedback from them. They get to report to the board. There's a special needs advisory committee, which also has board appointees to really get to that special transportation needs like paratransit service, senior and disabled services. And then a few years ago, we created a teen council. And the idea was to get high school students that were interested in public service, transportation, infrastructure, bus service, because we all know as we sort of mature and age and grow through Orange County, there's a whole future in front of us. And what better way to get sort of input than ask people when they're really young about what they think about transportation. And before the pandemic, that got us communicating on platforms like Instagram and platforms like Twitter and platforms like Facebook and things over the years. And I'm sure there's more platforms we don't even know about yet that we're going to communicate with young people on. And it's been really satisfying to be able to reach deep into the community at all levels. And the board really sets that in motion. And it's that engagement that you asked about, how citizens can engage with their elected officials and those representatives is just really critical.
Well, Daryl, what do you see with the future with public transportation? A lot of people don't want to use their cars, and I know that you want it to be safe for everybody, so you want to offer public transportation. What do you envision?
Well, it's sort of interesting. I think if you were to ask younger people a year ago before the pandemic, they didn't want a car. They wanted to be able to live in high density areas. They wanted to be able to walk to cool restaurants and placemaking and where there was activities. They engage socially over technology. And I still think that will be part of our future. We're a bit of maybe a pause right now where people are a little worried about crowds and a little worried about those things. But that human engagement is so important. And we heard a lot of that, Don, from the younger generation. But what the vision is, in my mind, is we have 3.2 million people in our county. We're getting more and more diverse each day, diverse by our cultures, diverse by our ages, diverse by our ethnicity. And every part of our community needs something a little bit different. And so we made big investments in the highway system or the freeway system in the 1990s. We're still doing that today, but we're going to need to invest in the freeway system. We're going to need to invest in the streetcar system and the bus system. And we also think about what can we do to do the best investment of all is encourage people to never make a trip. What if we could invest more in technology that allowed people to do what we're doing today because they wanted to, not because they have to? So those types of things, I think, all lead to this idea of how do we make our sort of transportation system and our system of movement of people and goods work better. So I think this little pause here, which has been a tough 9 months, really gives us an opportunity to think a little bit differently about what do we want Orange County to look like in the future.
Well, there's 2 ways I want to go right now. And one is currently people are using the bus. How are they handling that with COVID? And I'll go to you, Steve.
Sure. So we've addressed a lot of just the operational aspects of bus ridership during COVID, right? So for one, just really stepping up the cleaning efforts, a lot of education with our bus drivers and whatnot. We provide masks. I think we've given away, I heard, close to 300,000 masks to bus riders. We started doing rear entry boardings, just experimenting with different ways to kind of get people on and off the buses to keep our employees safe, to keep our riders safe. So there's been a lot of changes made to the system, all with respect to distancing and cleanliness and just sort of respecting the new rules we've all learned about COVID. But in addition to that, like I said earlier, we've seen a dramatic decrease in the ridership since the start of COVID. Went from a high of 120,000 riders a day down to a low of 25,000 riders a day, and now we're back up to about 60,000, which is up off the bottom, but it's still half of where we were at before. And I think a big internal question is, what does the future of bus ridership look like? Are we going to bounce back to 120,000 trips a day like we had before, or is that going to be is there going to be some structural change to the way people mobilize around the county going forward? And I don't think that's perfectly clear yet. So we're trying to be nimble and flexible in our response to provide transportation services for people in need around the county without underdoing it or overdoing it at this point to get it right. And we're trying to look forward to estimate what the future may look like in life after COVID, if you will.
How are you determining that in terms of ridership, in terms of what routes to keep? Because if you have a decrease in ridership, many times you have to decrease some of the routes.
I think there's so many different ways and reasons that people take public transit, and every community is a little bit different. Every county is. What we've seen in Orange County pre-COVID, which I think is going to stay to a certain degree post-COVID, is where you have density, where you have reliance upon public transit. And we made a big push over the last 3 years to engage community college students. This idea that access to education is access to the world, right? And we have a great community college system here in Orange County. We started out with Santa Ana College. We expanded that to other community colleges, Golden West, and we saw more than 1 million college students take bus trips. And the idea was to make it either low or no cost to them, build it into their fees. And we see when those activities come back, we think K through 12 education is going to get back in person sometime next year. We see community colleges getting back in person, and we see that that's a big part of it. And I think those are where we're going to be focusing our efforts. Maybe the efforts are going to be a little bit different, and maybe some of the more suburban parts of the county, as people maybe acclimate more to working at home or acclimate more to the personal automobile. But we still see that need in the dense urban parts of our county. And again, that focus on access to education. And then finally, jobs. There's a lot of jobs right now that are not there that were before. The theme parks are closed. Disneyland is closed. Hotels that support those theme parks are closed. And there's people that worked in those environments that relied upon OCTA each and every day for their bus ride. And if that job's not there, then the bus ride is not there. So we're trying to watch what happens with hotel activities, what happens with education, what happens with restaurants, what happens with jobs, and try to make sure that we're providing the service that is needed at the right time, if that makes sense. And I think, Steve, you and your board colleagues have been very focused on let's not leave anyone stranded, but let's also not run empty buses, right? We want to make sure that we're balancing those two.
And then looking ahead, and of course, kind of looking backwards a little bit, prior to COVID, the Orange County Transportation Authority was wanting to be ahead of what the transportation needs were going to be to avoid traffic, to decrease traffic. Thus, Measure M funding is all part of that. Where are we in terms of before COVID, in terms of your planning to decrease traffic? And then, of course, COVID put a decrease in traffic. And how do you move forward with what you had prior to COVID?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you should talk about the conversation that you led at the executive committee of the board yesterday, which is really the question of, do we keep going forward or do we rethink things?
Right. So we had a very robust discussion just yesterday morning at our executive committee meeting, which will be carried over to the full board, I believe, next week. Just looking at our capital improvement projects and trying to not necessarily make some immediate decisions, but at least start having the discussion about how aggressively do we want to be at maintaining original schedules, trying to stay on track despite all of the disruptions caused by COVID and the economy this year, and the economic impacts of COVID with sales tax decreases and revenue decreases to the agency. So, to bring projects forward means to finance more, take on debt that brings risk to the agency to some extent. We tend to be a relatively austere agency in terms of how we operate, so the thought of taking on much of any debt is always taken very seriously. So we looked at a range of options. I guess you'd say more of a sliding scale of staying on track with maintaining current project delivery schedules versus slowing things down a little bit and looking for keeping projects moving to become shovel ready, if you will, in the event that there are any federal funds available, grants, whatnot, that could be capitalized upon. Then we want to be ready to take advantage of those opportunities, versus being more cautious and slowing things down and not taking on as much debt. But still, all of the options that we considered were within the context of making sure that we maintain promises to the voters under Measure M. So we did not consider any options that would halt projects or slow down deliveries past when we've promised to deliver by, but just maybe backing off the throttle a little bit in terms of being so aggressive that we actually have to take on debt, and also factoring in balance that if we take on debt to go forward on projects and then a few months or 6 months down the line there are federal funds available, then maybe we miss those opportunities because we've already self-financed by taking on debt, and therefore the federal level doesn't feel like we need that money because we're already moving forward with the project anyway. So just a lot of different variables to consider on speeding up versus slowing down and how we take it. And ultimately, I think everyone agrees that we should take a balanced approach. We want to be as aggressive as we can about trying to maintain project timelines, but within the reality of not overburdening the agency with debt to the point that could be in any way scary for cash flow stabilization going forward.
Sounds like you'll need a lot of engagement with the public, Daryl, on all of these things.
Absolutely, and I think the public, they have a couple of things on their mind, right? One is they want a congestion-free commute, and they have some real important thoughts on what that is. And one of the sort of the silver linings in this pandemic is we used to do public outreach meetings on the I-5 project or the 405 project. We would do a community event, at a community center on a Wednesday night. Well, we moved all those virtually, and what happened is about 3 times more people are showing up. So we're getting a lot more engagement. So we fully intend to utilize more technology to engage more people at a deeper level, even as we go forward. But Don, to your point about engagement, people want their street fixed. They want their pothole fixed. They want their on-ramp fixed, or they want their bus route better. And what we've noticed, sort of with the details of this pandemic, is maybe the freeway volumes are 90% of what they used to be, and the streets volumes are 80% of what they used to be, the same number of cars, but they're sort of doing it at different times of the day. So the rush hour has shifted a bit in the morning. The rush hour has shifted a bit in the afternoon. We're seeing more trips in the midday, and those are excellent tools to help relieve congestion. So if we can sort of keep people making different decisions, so we can somehow help them make different decisions where not everybody is going on the I-5 at 7 a.m. and then 5 p.m. If some people are going earlier, some people are going later, some people aren't going at all. So that gives us this real opportunity to continue to invest and actually get more improvement out of the system investments than we had anticipated before. So we're hoping to hear a lot more from people about not only what they want in their neighborhood and their community and on their projects, but also I think as leaders in transportation, the board has asked me, I'm asking our staff, and we're trying to engage wherever we can, is the best, most stress-free trip is one that's never made, when you don't have to get on the freeway at 7 a.m. So what can we do to sort of keep that balance out there going forward, at the same time making investments that are needed? So it's a challenge, but I think we're up for it, and looking for help from the business community, from the education community, and then all of the Orange County residents that are here. Is let's approach our future a little bit different about transportation.
And transportation includes bikeways, Daryl.
Absolutely. Chairman Jones, that's one of his favorite things to talk about. So I'm going to defer to the chairman to let him talk about active transportation and bikeways and cycling.
Yeah, thank you for that handoff, Daryl. Yeah, Don, that's active transportation is something that's pretty near and dear to my heart. And we've employed some of these mechanisms in my home city in Garden Grove, where I serve as mayor. We've just completed a couple $1 million bike and pedestrian path that's just one tiny little segment that's part of our Pedals and Feet master plan throughout the city. But OCT is very deep into this space, right? So the concept of getting people out of their air polluting vehicles
We might have lost the mayor there. Maybe I'll just pick up, Dawn, if you can hear me.
Okay, I hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay. I think as we've invested in OCTA, we've worked really hard to give people choices and options. And I think what Mayor Jones was about to talk about was this idea that we have been very focused on getting people back into the opportunity to bike. Oh, the mayor's back.
Mm-hmm. I'm back. I'm sorry, I had an unstable connection there. That's the downside of not meeting in person these days.
So I was just saying, Chairman Jones, this idea that the board has asked OCTA to get very focused on active transportation at the city level, coordinating between cities, and really there's an opportunity to make it better. And it's a bit of a treasure hunt, if you will, but there's a lot of dollars out there to invest in bikeways. And we've done a really good job in Orange County of trying to get sort of our fair share, if you will, from state and federal sources, and really led by people on the board like Mayor Jones that have seen it at the city level be really important.
Okay, we're going to have to end this, but I want to thank you, Orange County Transportation Authority Board Chairman Steve Jones and OCTA's Chief Executive Officer Daryl Johnson for being on Impact OC. And I thank everyone for tuning in. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Dawn Camber. Have an impactful day.
You've been listening to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping our community. Right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio.